In this episode, we're going to finish up with controlling, or at least the high-level view that we're going to cover in this class. Now, depending upon the organization structure, there's different types of control, different attributes of the control. In the System 1 bureaucratic control, things are very formal. They're very top-down, formal participation, right? They're very structured. And again, as you would expect in a bureaucratic organization, very centralized. In a decentralized organization, you don't worry about requiring employee compliance. What you want to do is get their commitment. You get the buy-in. It's much more a psychological, motivational type of environment. Formal controls, well, the group works out those controls. The culture should have them. You don't have to institutionalize them. The group should want to do that. It should be just built into the way things are done. Typically very flat control. You don't have to go up many levels of management. And the rewards are for the group. You want the team to succeed, to thrive, to perform. Now, here's a question that sometimes arises. When you're designing controls, what I mean by designing controls for the lowest common denominator, I mean in some cases, the worst case. You can think of the way people perform. Do you design a process to handle the worst possible performers, or do you design processes and things to handle the majority of the cases and then deal with those outliers? Those are the kinds of questions you might have to ask when you're dealing with setting control standards. Strategic controls. Is the corporation meeting its objectives? Objectives typically at a strategic level, high level, are shown by the income statement and the balance sheet. Are we on track? But there could be other strategies. How many, if you're McDonald's, how many restaurants have we opened up in India, for example? Are we on track? That's part of our strategy to go international. If we're looking at centralized versus decentralized, if we want to adapt to other conditions, well, maybe our control is more decentralized than centralized. If we want to learn and change, we want to have the control pushed down as far as possible, right? Think of control, think of decision making. Now, in an organization, when you're dealing with and trying to control things, and that kind of sounds bad to say control things. We're really talking about managing, but there's a control aspect, right, to management. When you plan, think about, how am I going to measure this? Well, we plan to have increase our sales or the number of people that come to our restaurant. Okay, are we going to measure it? How are we going to do it? Who's going to do it? Where's it going to be kept? Where are we going to keep track of that? Sometimes you need to be flexible. You can't measure all the details that go on in a business. There's just way too many things. Measure the important things that are in line with your plans, but sometimes if you have a problem, you might have to measure more. If you're at a restaurant and you got a quality problem, well, maybe you weren't measuring what the amount of lettuce you're throwing away or something like that, or the bad lettuce that comes in, or the bad steel that comes in if you're going to make nails. You might have to measure more once you find out there's a problem. Obviously, you need to be accurate. If the data's bad, you just can't control, right? It's garbage in, garbage out kind of stuff. Got to get the information early enough to act on it. But here's one of my favorite pet peeves. Don't track data that you're not going to do something with. Don't make me track something and then just not use the data. It's wasted work, it's frustrations. If it's important and we're going to make decisions based upon the data, yep, we ought to track it. But if we're not going to use it, then don't make me track it and keep all that records and stuff. It's just more work and more frustration. And the data you get should be objective. When people look at it and say, yep, that's the way it is. And I'd say, well, I didn't think that really, nope. This is the objective measure that people can look at to make decisions with. Now, people are going to be resistant to control. I just talked about some myself. I get really frustrated when people are asking me to keep track of things that I know they're not going to do anything with. It's just for some pretty chart or something. So you want to be careful. You want to get motivated to people. You don't want to over-control. You don't need too much data. Maybe you're measuring the wrong thing. You could be careful what you ask for. You could ask for how many times somebody makes a sales call. Well, they could make a lot of sales calls, but they're not spending very much time with the customer when they go. And so be careful how you do this, because you're going to drive behavior. This is another one. People are worried about things that if they're under budget in one year, you might get cut the next year. There's games that get played again. So you see people at the end of the year saying, I got to spend my budget. Why? Because if they spent their whole budget, they'll get more money next year. But if they don't spend it all this year, well, then maybe they get cut the following year. So it's gamesmanship again that get played with budgets. And people may not like people seeing what they're spending their money on. Not a good thing. Again, gamesmanship. So in summary, in terms of looking at controlling is very, very important. And if you take one thing away from this, take away the idea that if you want to control things, you have to measure them. It's an important part of being a manager, whether it's part of your budget or whether it's part of your operations. You need to measure.